Hey guys, Koilie here. So, I've had some requests for a new Shadow Priest guide for 5.4. Well, actually for pretty much everything since Mists of Pandaria started, but as some of you guys know, I took a little break for a tier, and, well, I missed you guys, so I had to come back. Anyway, my little mini guide for the 5.0 Mists of Pandaria patch was pretty popular, and people liked the, quick, easy reference. A lot of people are looking for something just, they're like, Koilie, I missed a couple tiers, and what's changed with Shadow Priest? Can you make another little guide, Just give me the rundown, let me know what's going on. I'm like, well, I'm busy, I got this going on, that going on, but you know what, guys? I finally decided it's time. I'm going to do this for you guys. It's still pretty fresh in the patch, so here it is, guys. WoW Patch 5.4 Shadow Priest Mini Guide by Koilie. Enjoy. Alright, let's start off with a quick rundown of the talents. If you've been playing for a while, then you probably know most of what's going on here. But if you've missed out on a bit of this, then some of it may seem new to you. Since the start of Mists of Pandaria, we've had one pretty much major change to our talent system, and that was the Solace and Insanity change. The old Insanity, I tried to make it work. I tried to find some place for it to be viable, but it just never was. So they did end up changing it, and what it now does is after you use Devouring Plague, it increases your Mind Flay damage for the duration of that Devouring Plague by 33% per orb use. So, basically a 100% increase if you do a 3 orb DP, which you almost always will. So here, I'll show you how that works. It's pretty simple though. It will change some of your priorities a little bit at times. Meaning basically if you have Devouring Plague up, Mind Flay is no longer your lowest priority spell. Meaning you don't want to clip it and cancel it for things such as dot refreshes. You still want to clip it for Mind Blast or Death, but not for dot refreshes. Now you can refresh your dots early when available if you have the right power-ups, etc. It's a pretty much play-by-ear kind of thing. So we'll go ahead and launch into this guy. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Now you see here, I'm going to go ahead and refresh my pain before I dump them because I know that I'm about to channel Insanity. And you see, Mind Flay Insanity, it looks bigger, it's badder, it's more awesome, and it does a lot of damage. Now you can see there that I got a Divine Insight proc during that Insanity channel, and I did clip for that. Again here, getting another Insanity channel. And you can clip Insanity with itself as you normally would. Now right here, my Vampiric Touch is running low, and it's going to expire during this Insanity. But being as the Insanity is a higher profile and I didn't choose to refresh it before casting my Devouring Plague, I had to let it fall off there. But it's a DPS increase in the long run, so I'm not really going to worry about it too much. It doesn't change much. Just you got to think a little more about your dots and when and where you want to refresh them or allow them to expire. And you want to maximize your Insanity uptime, meaning, you don't want to move. You don't want to be using this spec if you can't stand still long enough to cast Mind Flay after DP goes down. If I had to move constantly, this wouldn't be so good. That's where you would want to use FTCL or potentially even Mindbender, which I'll get into that a little bit now. Insanity is primarily the go-to spec for single target or even multi-target fights, but which have a singular target that you need to rapidly burn down. Now, Mindbender and From Darkness Comes Light have recently been buffed in patch 5.4. FDCL now has a 5% higher proc rate, so it's 20% chance on a VT tick to get a proc. That's 1 in 5 chance every tick. It procs fairly often, and on multiple targets, it procs so much that you might as well just call it Shadow Priest's moving while casting ability, because you will get a lot of procs and you will be able to move. You know, those are your global fillers. At times with upwards of 3 targets even, you'll get so many procs that you can just literally stand there casting instants over and over as you move, you know, barely ever needing to mind flay, just moving along the map. I find it really useful on fights, example Spoils of Pandaria in the Siege of Orgrimmar raid, where there's a lot of targets, I'm constantly able to dot things, and there's a lot of movement and target changing. There are, for instance, on the Mantid side, in the encounter you have 2 sides, you split your raid and you do the Mogu side and the Mantid side. And on the Mantid side, there are these supernova sparks that if you don't kill them before they finish their cast, they'll lots of damage to the raid. Potential raid wiping mechanic. And it's really nice to be able to tab over to them or target macro, or you know, click whatever you do to target them and slam some mind spikes into them really quickly. Now, these are primarily the talents that you're going to be swapping between Solace and Insanity and From Darkness Comes Light. However, Mindbender does have its place. Currently, I use Mindbender on things where you really need on-demand damage and you need it very consistently. Now, Solace and Insanity can be used in a similar manner for on-demand damage, as you can, you know, hold on to your 3 orbs and you can put them into whatever you need to burst on, and you've got the Devouring Plague damage, which is very powerful on its own, but then you are also channeling Insanity into it, so it's quite bursty, but it requires you to be able to stand and channel. Now that's where Mindbender comes in, when you can't necessarily stand and channel that Insanity after you've used your 3 orbs. Places where I'm finding Mindbender in this tier, for instance Siege of Orgrimmar, are Thok, the Bloodthirsty, the giant T-Rex in the underground layers of Siege of Orgrimmar. He has phases, for one, where he's constantly interrupting your spell casting, causing you to either stop casting or get locked out for 2 seconds, and at various points in the fight he casts this so frequently that you can barely get a global off before, you know, getting silenced. So Mindbender is able to, you know, you cast it and it's going to do its damage regardless of what's going on in the boss fight. You're silenced, you get locked out, no bigs. Mindbender's going to sit there slamming anyway. And it was buffed by 10% for its damage as well. So it's pretty comparable in situations where neither of these 2 talents are going to be better. Another situation where I'm finding it useful is the assembly line or conveyor belt portion of the Siegecrafter Black Fuse encounter in Siege of Orgrimmar. You go up on this conveyor belt and you have a very short amount of time to burn down one of the targets up there. And you're on this conveyor belt which is moving, and you also need to move with these targets to keep up with them, to keep them in range, and you have to navigate through various lasers, and it's pretty dangerous. So this lets you, you know, you can put your dots up as the unit's coming out and you stick your pet on it, and this way you've got a consistent damage going into it no matter what happens to you. If you get discombobulated and you can't make it through the laser beams and you have to wait and target gets out of range and you can't DPS it, or your DPS is lower because, you know, you're moving around a lot and you're not able to stand and deliver your max damage, you've got this going into it and it's going to do, you know, a fair amount of damage on its own. So come down here, tier 75 talents. Now this tier, I'm noticing that Twist of Fate is usually the go-to talent. It's been buffed in 5.4 as well. It now activates at 35% instead of 20. So it has a much higher uptime. Power Infusion with the levels of haste we're going to, and it's just not really that many places I've found to use it. I mean, it's still Power Infusion, it still does the same thing, it's still powerful, but generally you're going to find Twist of Fate or Divine Insight being the go-to. I would rarely take Divine Insight without Insanity, but it does depend a lot on what the situation is. For instance, if I were to take DI, it might mean that I'm going to be doing a lot of movement, and I want to be able to move freely. Having more instant casts proccing is great. That's when I would also use either Mindbender or From Darkness Comes Light. However, if there's a lot of things to dot, and they're ads or something that's going to die a lot and give me high uptime, then of course Twist of Fate would be much more powerful than Divine Insight. Now, the level 90 tier hasn't changed at all. You got Halo, you got D-Star, and you got Cascade. Halo's pretty much the go-to single target DPS. It's the only one that's a DPS increase against a single target to be used on cooldown. However, it can't always be reliably used because you've got to be at optimal Halo range in order to get the max damage for it, which is 25 yards, between 25 and 30, but pretty much as close to 25 as you can. Now I use this nice range display add-on, which allows me to add rangefinders to various aspects of my UI. I have it turned on to show me the range of my target, my mouse over, and my focus. Now in this instance they're all the same thing, but you can see I can mouse over multiple other units and get a quick eyeball of their range, plus have, you know, some unit focused, and that can allow me to position myself quickly to halo multiple targets for max damage, which is really important. You don't want to use the global when it's going to be a DPS loss. If you're too close and it's not going to do the right amount of damage, it could be a DPS loss to use that global. You might as well just continue in your normal rotation. Now, like I said, you can't always use Halo because sometimes your raid has to stack on the boss or be near it. And if you're trying to Halo in this range, it's not worth that global. Now you have Divine Star and Cascade here. Cascade still, it wants to be farther from the target to do max damage as well. And even at max range, it's a good global filler if you've got to move. You know, it can take the place of throwing up another Shadow or Pain refresh. But it's mostly going to be optimal when there are a lot of targets spread around and you can, you know, throw this out there and hit the maximum amount of targets, or at least a fair amount of targets. And like I said, you want these targets to be far apart, not in a clump, because the farther it jumps, the more likely it is to do max damage. I find most often though that Halo or Divine Star are what you're going to be going with. Halo, like I said, for max single target and AoE damage to piles of ads that are going to be, you know, that you can be out of range from, away from, basically, not stacked up on. Now Divine Star, this is going to be most useful when you have to stack on your raid on top of the boss and you've either got some AoE to do stacked up or potentially as an off-spec healing add-on. I find Divine Star to be very useful during progression on intense healing boss fights. Thok the Bloodthirsty, for instance, he's constantly interrupting you, which brings another bonus to Divine Star, which none of the other talents have, which is that if you get spell locked, you can still cast Divine Star. If you're trying to heal and you get holy locked, you can still cast Divine Star. If you're trying to do damage and you get shadow locked, you can still cast Divine Star, which is why Divine Star is so awesome in PvP as well. But yes, and its healing is fantastic. Throwing it through a stacked raid, it's a fair global filler, even on a single target. It's not going to be a DPS increase, so don't go using it on a single target as a DPS increase. You need at least 2 targets for that. The amount of healing you can do with it, it's fantastic, and it's totally worth it for progression when needed. Never overlook the secondary aspects of your 90 talents, the healing. Halo, great single target or multi-target DPS if you can be away from the mobs, but also a great healer cooldown if your raid is spread all around. Sometimes you'll find yourself, if you really want to, you know, be that true bro who hooks your raid up, sometimes you'll find yourself pushing Halo as a raid cooldown instead of as a damage increaser. So, and when you do that, that's when you realize, man, I'm in it to win it, not just to be a selfish scumbag DPSer, you know. So I'll give you a quick rundown now on the stat system, the stat priorities for this patch. Basically, if you're still gearing up, there's not much you really need to worry about. Reforge everything into haste and hit if you need to get your hit cap. Whatever's left, put it in haste. Just keep going haste, 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 haste. As for gymming, it's not really going to make a huge difference which way you gym. You'll see a lot of priests gymming like pure haste and stuff, so you're going to want to do that, but you don't need to do that. If it's cheaper for you to get regular int gyms or, you know, int haste the way priests used to gym, feel free to do that. It isn't until, you know, you get upwards of, you know, the 540, 550 item level that the secondary stats really start to rise above, you know, half the percentage value of a point of intellect. So above 550, for instance, you know, you're getting into the point where your secondary stats are at like a 0.7 value towards intellect. So basically what that means is that if you take one intellect gem, which is 160 int, that's 160 points. Now if you take a haste gem that's 320 haste, and haste is 0.7% of a value of intellect, so take 320 divided by 7%, that's 224 points. So that 320 haste gem is worth 224 points, and that int gem is only worth 160. So I'm pretty sure you guys are good enough with math that you can at least tell that 224 is higher than 160. That's where the whole secondary gymming comes in. You don't really need to understand that. If you want to, you know, there's a lot of information on howtopriest.com. You can ask anyone, you know, in the forums there, ask for help. But like I said, you don't really necessarily need to understand why to do it. I find it's better to understand why rather than just what, because then I can take from that and I can grow and learn, and I don't have to ask every time I get a new piece of item, what should I reforge this to, what should I gem? I will know because I'll know how the system works. So, you know, it's up to you how much you want to invest in it. I'm here for you if you just want to straight up, quick Koilie, tell me what I should do. I'm also here for you if you want to know more and you want to understand, Koilie, why are we doing this? What is the benefit to me? Now, as I was saying, when you get upwards of the 550 item level, if you're in current gear, you know, you're raiding Siege of Orgrimmar, you're going to have this high item level. And you're going to be wondering, okay, Koilie, what do I do now? Well, pretty much this tier, what we're looking to do is reach a 50% haste. That's GCD cap. That means your global cooldown is 1 second, your Mind Blast is 1 second, your VT is 1 second, everything is 1 second. So everything you do is only as long as a global, and it's only 1 second, with the exception of Mind Flay, obviously. That's longer than a global. So you got your hit cap, 15%. You pretty much always want this. You can go a little over. You can even, if you want to, go a little under. It's not super detrimental for Shadow to go under, but it can be. It depends on what you're doing. Now, the biggest things that can happen if you're running under is you miss a Mind Blast, or you miss a Mind Flay channel while you have Devouring Plague up and you're using the Insanity talent. Other than that, the only thing you lose from a miss is 1 GCD. At 50% haste, you lose 1 GCD for any miss other than Mind Blast and a Mind Flay during Devouring Plague. For instance, if you miss a Vampire Touch, you simply recast it. It's 1 global cooldown. You've only lost a global cooldown with damage. It's not going to be that detrimental. So you got to make sure, you know, was that miss worth the extra stats I gained by not getting my full hit cap? Generally, no, but if you're very close like this, 1495 you see here, I wouldn't run any lower than that. Between 1495 and 1499, you know, are as low as I would personally go under the cap. It's very rare to get a miss at this level. You could raid all week, you know, for instance, and see maybe 1 or 2 misses. Now, like I was saying, most cases it's only a GCD you've lost by missing. If you miss a Devouring Plague, you don't lose the orbs, you just cast it again. You miss a VT, you just cast it again. Pain, cast it again. Mind Flay, cast it again. Now, Mind Blast, if you miss that, you lose the cooldown. You still gain the orb though. So even then it's not the end of the world. You still get the orb, but you do lose that high damage from that one spell, and it goes on cooldown. If you miss a Mind Flay during your Devouring Plague uptime while spec'd into Insanity, then of course you lose 1 global, which is about 2 ticks at this haste level of Mind Flay. So you lose a pretty fair chunk of damage. So if it were a progression fight and I were using that talent, I would perhaps consider having gone over my hit chance instead of under. But since the fight I'm currently progressing on, I'm using Mindbender and any miss won't make or break the fight, I chose to run a little under, push my limits, and go ham basically. So I leave that up to you. You can of course hit me up in-game or on Twitch or here on YouTube if you want to ask me a specific question. Maybe say, Koilie, I'm doing this, I'm thinking about running my hit a little low, or what do you think, you know? I'll try to give you the best answer I can. Haste up to your 50% point, hit cap obviously, and then crit. Just reforge everything that's left in the crit. Now, that's just assuming you're sitting there with regular old gear, no UVLS. What about when you get into your tier set bonuses? I've heard a lot about 2-piece tier, for instance, they'll say to me. Okay, well, 2-piece tier 16 is 40% increase on the critical damage bonus of your mastery procs. Confused? Anyway, what it means is whenever your mastery procs an extra tick of a dot and that tick crits, it'll crit for 40% more bonus damage. So now you're thinking, okay, so in order to maximize this 2-piece, I need crit, but I also need mastery, right? Yeah, pretty much that's exactly how it is. Obviously you need mastery to get your mastery to proc, but then you need crit so that that proc will crit. So what's the best way to do this? Well, the math geniuses over at How to Priest have determined that the best way to do this is looking like just straight up go 1-to-1 ratio on your mastery and crit. Not necessarily exact, but as close as you can get to it. If you look right now, I'm running a crit of 8,020 and I'm running a mastery of 8,111. So they're pretty close, you know, they're within 100 points rating of each other. And that's pretty much how you want to run it. You know, get your hit cap, get your haste cap, take what's left, and try to get as close to a 1-to-1 ratio as you can. And that's it in a nutshell. So for those of you that found this video informative, you're welcome, and thank you for watching. I hope to see you guys all on my stream, twitch.tv/Koilie, and make sure you hit the subscribe button here. See you guys later.